Okay, good evening, everybody. We have kind of a packed agenda, so we'll get moving rather quickly here. First and foremost, I took attendance. The 4 school board members are here. Dr. Weston, Mr. McKinney, Mr. Liggett, and Ms. White. So make sure that you sign in on the sign-in sheet then before we leave tonight, and we shall get moving along. So first up is Mr. Miller. Chief Miller here will help lead us through items 1, 2, and 3. First up, SPO, our school police officers, and our school security guard team updates and assignments.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Good evening, everyone. The chart in front of you just lays out our school employees as they currently stand and their assignments throughout the buildings across the district. We have some shifting around that's occurring right now. Officer Moreno, who works here at the high school, is currently out on an injury. We moved our school police officer Holyhue from Skipback Elementary here to the high school. We have 3 other district employees here during school hours: Mike Horan, Mike Robinson, and Jim Buchert, as well as supplemental APC agents that are here on contract both during the school day and then again into the evening. That carries over as well to both middle schools. So our middle school assignments, Officer Burdick and Security Agent McFarland are at East, and Officer Early and Jared Jackson are up at West. Again, with APC coverage in the evening for the different events that occur on those particular campuses. Officer Vogel is assigned at Evergreen. He does daily visits to South Elementary because of that shortage that I mentioned to you, so he splits his time between those 2 schools. And likewise, Officer Elverson, that you see listed there at Schwenksville, splits his time with Skipback. South and Skipback, you'll notice South and Schwenksville East have a school security officer that's assigned there in addition to those officers that visit. So none of the buildings are without coverage at the moment. We have 1 vacancy, which was the position at South that was previously filled by Brad Getz. Mr. Getz took a law enforcement position in Lancaster County and left us at the beginning of the summer, and we're still awaiting applicants to fulfill that. And then Andy Mathias fills in at South in his absence as well. So I think we have pretty good coverage at the moment. We do use APC in a supplemental role, not only during the daytime, but a lot of our nighttime events. Between the schedule that we have within the buildings and what Mr. Felty submits for the different athletic activities across the district, we are in really good shape. We've been seeing consistent agents from APC. We're very happy with that. They are people that we become familiar with, much like our own employees that you see listed here. So we're working, again, as I said, with HR to fill that vacancy, and we anticipate that Officer Moreno would be back here at the high school by the end of October. So as you see here, just a summary of kind of what I went over, who's assigned where, and the numbers that we have. There are a number of larger events that come up from time to time. The band has their Challenge in the Valley, I believe it's called. Rally in the Valley. No. Music in the Valley. Thank you. Sorry. Too many Valley terms here. Art and food truck festivals in the summer. We have a number of other events that go on, and we've been very fortunate to have good coverage with that, working with the different parent groups that are at the schools running these events. Again, we've been fortunate that these have gone off very well, and our employees are very well received by the staff and the students, especially in those buildings from day to day. So a little bit about what is going on between school police officers and school security guards, all driven by our policy and ARs. As you see listed here, there are multiple ones. The policy here, 705.1, references what school police officers' obligations are and responsibilities. Obviously, in addition to maintaining security and safety, which is everyone's business, not just our team, but everyone across the district. They are enhancing the ability to interact with our students on a daily basis. And I've been seeing a lot of that happening, which is very pleasing to me. Several of our staff are coaches and sponsors for some of the different groups that are running during the school year, which is very good to see. So they have been working in that role, which is one of their primary functions, is to establish those relationships with our students and the community. We've been handling some minor issues throughout the beginning of the year, some growing pains, if you will, for the different buildings. But all in all, I think Dr. Russell would agree that it's been a very good fit for us so far. We keep working on developing these policies and adding in different layers of training, different layers of responsibility for the different roles that these officers have. The training piece that has been going on involves different things such as trauma-informed education. They just did on our half day yesterday, they spent a good bit of time yesterday afternoon going over threat assessment, what that looks like, how they can support it. We have a very robust team. As you know, there's 25 people throughout the district, principals, administrators, BCBAs, counselors, and the like. But I wanted our team to be able to understand how they relate to that, how it works with all of that going on. So we went through all that. We've had training as we worked into the summer, the few extra weeks that they are here, met with some of our administrative staff with regards to special education, 504s, IEPs, just getting to know what that's all about. This particular graph that you see in front of you here is a work in progress as we go through training our personnel each school year. We'll be updating this with new topics in addition to the ones that we look for on a regular basis. So as police officers, our school police are required to meet the state criteria. That changes every year. We are enrolled to do that, and we monitor that in-house and report back to PDE. But it's training that is created and handled by the Pennsylvania State Police across the Commonwealth, and the officers are required to comply with that. So even though we don't report back to them in the sense that municipal police do, we are required to do that same training. And then in addition, the graph that you see here to the right is a number of those topics from throughout the district that we are involved in from day to day that we expose our folks to. Mandated reporting, Title IX information, what a proper boundary is between an adult and a student, what to look for when it comes to children in crisis. There's a litany of things that we've been exposing them to, and as I said, they've been very receptive to it. The public has been very supportive and receptive to it, and we continue to work through these different protocols for our officers moving forward. Without reading through the whole thing, I didn't know if there were any specific questions about any of this before we move on. Or Dr. Russell, if you wanted to comment on that matrix at all. I know that you and Mr. Moran and I have spent a good bit of time on it. So
I really don't have anything to add. I think you did a nice job explaining some of the things that we are focused on per policy, as well as maintaining an open mind to what's new and also should be considered. So
Right.
Continue to try and work with this team to make sure that they are a part of our community and understand students to the degree that that's possible. We're facilitating that.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if there's no questions with regards to that, the second topic we'd like to discuss tonight is the youth aid panel. I'm going to defer to Dr. Russell here in just a moment, but the youth aid panel is overseen by the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. Dr. Russell, Mr. Mitchell, and I met with the District Attorney's Office just 2 weeks ago about bringing a youth aid panel here. It exists in several districts within the county as well as at the county level. Having one here in district would be a benefit to us, where we can handle these concerns that are prevalent in our district or that are presented to us in our district without having to wait for a backlog that might be created at the county level. But as far as its operation and its reach, I'll let Dr. Russell discuss this here in a little more detail.
So this is something that Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell has started as a pilot program. There are 4 districts in Montgomery County currently that have established a local youth aid panel. And the whole reason behind doing this, according to Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell, is that students spend a lot of time in school. Schools get to know students. Does it make sense for schools to support students when they make poor choices in realizing and developing to make better choices? So currently, Abington, Cheltenham, North Penn, and Upper Merion have all developed local youth aid panels so that instead of sending students to the county level youth aid panel, they would move through their local, at the district level, youth aid panel. North Penn has 3 of them. They are also moving youth aid panels into their 3 junior high middle schools, if you will. So I have introduced, if you would advance the slide, this idea to our high school administrative team. They are interested in learning more, and we'll set up a time for them to also meet with Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell. She was extremely informative when we were there and met with her. This slide gives you some sense of the expectations and how it works. Our staff would be the panel members. And the suggestion is that you have 4 or 5 panel members. You train 6, but you have 4 or 5. And you can decide who those individuals across your district might be, but they should be staff. They recommend against parents or community members. And there's a real process, there's a protocol that's followed when a student is sent to a youth aid panel instead of, say, serving in-school suspension. There's a protocol that's followed. There is a referral to the panel, and then there's an entrance meeting with the panel. There are weekly check-ins with the student, and then there is an exit meeting. Community service can be a consequence, if you will, or a response to poor choices. But those community service opportunities must be in district and approved by Assistant District Attorney Bell. We would incorporate restorative practices as a part of all that would be encompassed in this youth aid panel. If you advance the slide, these are some examples of the consequences that would then prompt a student going before the youth aid panel. So this also involves us as a district looking at our code of conduct in the student handbook and potentially considering some revisions if we move down this path. Here are some examples of the infractions that prompt a student to come before a youth aid panel. In Cheltenham on the left, North Penn in the middle, and Upper Merion on the right. So we wouldn't be blazing a path, but we would be following down one that I believe could be really good for our kids. And our high school administrative team is also in support of that. I think that might be the last slide. Yeah. So I don't know if there are any questions about the youth aid panel. Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell believes that if we are serious about this and the committee is in support of exploring it further, our admin team is on board, that we could actually have it up and running by the start of the 2nd semester if we're interested. So it involves, and we're laying out a plan, it involves lots of communication. We need to help others understand what a youth aid panel does, its purpose, how it serves and supports students, the models we can look to learn from that are right around us. And then we have to move through the process of selecting the panel members and deciding, is this a volunteer position? Is it a paid position? How do we want to work that? And then structure those meetings in front of the youth aid panel either sometime during the school day. So for example, North Penn does it during their, what you sometimes hear described as a lunch and learn. They have a morning nighttime, it's called. They're the nights. So in the morning, there's an opportunity for students to come in early and get extra help from teachers, or shoot hoops, or swim in the pool, or do what they feel good about or that they need, and that keeps them engaged in school. Souderton has a red zone in the morning, while Springfield Township has a lunch and learn where they have this time dedicated midday. So some school districts, we're learning, are having their youth aid panel convene, whether it's once a week or once every other week, during this lunch and learn time or this morning time before school. But it's a time that they've decided is most convenient for everyone and doesn't interrupt a student's school day or the teacher's school day if they are the ones on the panel. And that's what I would recommend based on what I'm learning. Versus, say, after school when we could conflict with activities or work schedules, other things. So those sorts of conversations have to continue to develop as we're learning more, but there's a real possibility we could have something in place and try it out if the committee supports, like I said, this path, this direction.
Dr. Russell, I'm curious,
Go back one, Jim, if you would. Thank you. Yes.
or do you know of the 3 districts that you have up there, is the structure boilerplate, or is there like nuances that can come into play? So is there a category of events or activities or charges or infractions that students could fit into, and then they're automatically plug and play, or is it all nuanced in the sense of everything's handled specifically to that particular incident?
There is a little bit of choice and flexibility in, if I understand the question correctly, the infractions that you might say or denote in your handbook, code of conduct, that prompt a youth aid panel. And a student doesn't have to accept it. A parent may say, I don't want my child to go before the youth aid panel in the district. I want my child to serve the 3 days of ISS. That's a possibility. Now, Angela Bell has developed this protocol, and she needs to approve everything. She really keeps a close eye on these local youth aid panels. A student can come before the youth aid panel 3 times, and then that's it. Then we have to take a different path with that particular student. But in terms of the infractions, there is some flexibility, and you can get a flavor of what school districts are doing here. However, the protocol, the process that's moved through, is standardized by Angela Bell.
Would there be anything that you could think of that would like not meet criteria for you, being this possible process for a student?
I haven't come across that yet. I know that District Attorney Angela Bell has been looking at, in Montgomery County, the number of students by race that have been recommended to youth aid panels, so white students versus black, and there are fewer black students recommended to these youth aid panels versus white, and the blacks that are recommended tend to be less successful. They come out and they repeat. So that's a focus area, and that's at the forefront of her messaging to a school district. When Chief Miller and Arthur Mitchell and I went down, she spent 2 hours with us and went over everything. So that's part of the impetus for her moving these to the local level. Our teachers and administrators know students really well. So how do they impact them when they opt to make a poor choice? And how do we get them back on a path and avoid them going into the juvenile justice system? That's also the goal. Keep them out of the criminal system. They're kids. What can we do?
Ms. Bell has been very focused on the numbers that you speak of. And one of the things that she did with the youth aid panel, since I became familiar with it a number of years ago, is it used to be you had one chance with youth aid. And if you were to come before the youth aid panel and then be referred back in the future, they would say no. And she makes a very valid point to us the day we were there. She goes, how many 14-year-olds do you know that only make one mistake? So she does the 3 strikes rule. She deals with only nonviolent offenses. And with the differentiation in numbers by demographic, she's very specific to visit those areas and then look deeper into the process of why is this student not doing the best at this program compared to others, and what might be the cause for that. And they've been able on the back end to partner with other county agencies such as the Board of Health or Social Services to provide services to families where these kids are struggling. And you can imagine some of the more urban areas in our county, they have a lot of issues with students who are not supervised, that don't have a parent figure or anyone in the home for guidance. They're left to their own accord. So she's very determined to try and break through that barrier and work with them, along with utilizing this program to keep them out of the criminal justice system. So I just pulled up, there's a link on one of the previous slides to the DA's office. If you go to their year-end report, there's a 2-page summary of the youth aid panel. It said in 2023 they handled 700 incidents. They had an 87% success rate. So those 87% completed everything that was asked of them through the youth aid panel. So she's got some very impressive numbers. And she is, as I said, she's very determined to make sure that these students understand what they're involved in, what they have done to bring them to this point, and then what they can do moving forward to not come back. So we were very pleased to hear that. And she has, I forget how many staff she said she had. There were 3 of them in the office during the day, but I think there's 8 people on the team, along with multiple people in these youth aid panels throughout the county. So,
You know, I'll also add, she's truly passionate. You know, Chief Miller just used the word determined. She's passionate about this work and willing to do backflips to support the organization of these local youth aid panels. I was really impressed. I am very excited about the opportunity for our district to move down this path and move forward in terms of how we respond to student behaviors, to truly modify them and to help them realize, truly turn them into teachable moments. And our high school, I'm looking at Coach Heist, our high school is trying to get restorative practices to be more of a part of the work that's or the conversation that comes into play when students make poor choices. She allows you to implement restorative practices after a student has exited whatever they've had to go through as part of the youth aid panel, and the victim has to agree. So there has to be this collaborative agreement and a willingness, and it's supported by adults. So very organized and really with the best intentions in mind, in my opinion, for kids.
Were you able to have any dialogue or have any kind of debrief from students that have gone successfully through the process, kind of like a testimonial? Was that offered at all, or is that available?
I believe it's available. We just met with Angela and her assistant at the courthouse the day we were down. They didn't have anyone that was in the program at that time, but she's offered to provide us with as much information as we need to make a clear choice.
That might be helpful, just to put context around the benefit of the positivity of the program. That's my first question. And then the second part of that is whether or not the 4, I guess it's 4 to 6 really, individuals that you would be looking to train in the process. Do you have individuals already targeted that you would approach to do it, or like who would the stakeholders within PV be?
So in talking to the high school admin team and introducing this idea, these conversations have to extend now to our staff. And I would really be interested in learning whether or not staff are interested in being a part of these panels. So I think if somebody steps up because this is really interesting to them, I think that's a direction we seriously consider going. So at this point, we know we have to lay out a communication plan. From the administrators, we have to go to staff. From the staff, we have to go to parents. From parents, we have to go to students. There's a plan. Should it be only high school teachers if it's a high school youth aid panel? Should it include middle school or elementary teachers that also have connections to these students? These are questions they're preliminary questions that we're tossing around, but we really need to have more of those conversations to be able to answer them.
And then I guess that kind of, parlays into, and it may be premature then, what kind of conversations, and I'm assuming none yet, have been had with bargaining units with regard to pay? Okay, none. And do you know or have data as to what the other districts do by way of compensation? No? Okay.
I don't, but I do plan to reach out to them. Fox Rothschild is the solicitor for Upper Merion. I've talked to our solicitor about any legal advice that he's offered or has been offered to that district. We work closely with North Penn through the tech school. So there are opportunities for us to learn more firsthand. We work with the superintendents of Cheltenham and Abington. So we're going to gather more information. And the idea that maybe we can hear from students directly is one that I would wonder would be entertained, and that there may be a real possibility for us to do that. And it just supports the case.
Yeah.
If I'm envisioning it correctly, it supports the case to move it forward. So lots of opportunities for collaboration. And like I said, Angela Bell is extremely helpful.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that's my whole thing, is that I wanted to set it up for success. And if that has to be, you know, obviously training's involved, but that I really kind of presume that there would be a monetary component of allowing there would be an extra expertise depending on who all was stepping into the role.
So she's sort of funny too. She makes it very clear, I will give you the protocols and help you set this up. You deal with the bargaining unit.
Yeah.
She does not, make any decisions or guidance. So some may be volunteers, and I have to learn that. Some may be compensated, especially if it's outside of school hours. So that's an aspect we're still gathering information about to learn. And then we'll bring back to more conversations with stakeholder representatives.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious of what the flavor
Me too.
would be.
Yeah,
Like,
we don't know yet.
yeah, okay.
Also, Dr. Russell, as you think about restorative practices being a part of this process, would you see any elements that, especially as we try to make a community whole again, and would there be any button up against FERPA violations in regards to a student possibly being identified as to an infraction and therefore being put out there in their...
To a youth aid panel?
Right.
Okay, good question. No, because they can opt for it or opt out of it. And if our students are cited by state police, they are sometimes assigned the county youth aid panel. And Angela Bell has said to us, if for some reason yours wasn't effective, you can refer them to me and my youth aid panel. So there was no violation of FERPA that emerged in our conversations, and I'll talk to Mr. Subers more about the legal considerations because of Upper Marion. And again, I think that opt-out helps alleviate that. A student can opt out. These individuals on the panel will know what the student did, and will get to know the student pretty intimately and work closely with that student, building a relationship and then hopefully maintaining it over time.
But the community as a whole would not, so not every kid in the school would know that Johnny did X, Y, and Z,
No.
and therefore that's why they're doing service or,
No, it's not an open process in that regard at all. So the records are sealed much like any kind of other filing under the criminal justice system. It's just that there is no charge with this, as you were. And then even if it's community service, something in the public, that would be a discretionary decision that those individuals could make on their own.
So I guess I'm personally in favor of taking next steps. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
Okay.
Yeah, collectively.
Okay.
All right, cool.
It would be helpful to know any reservations or additional wonderings too, but otherwise we will continue to gather information and bring it back to the committee as we progress. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I'm not used to this. Who is responsible for overseeing and enforcing the consequences of the youth aid panel?
Dean, you can chime in. I would say it's the panel itself and then the student's administrator.
So if
Working
they were
closely.
assigned some sort of community service outside of school hours, that would be the responsibility of one of the panel members to oversee.
Yeah, so they have successive meetings with whoever is facing the panel, where they have an accountability system that the district attorney's office has already established for all the panels to use. And that's when I mentioned that success rate at 87%. Those 13% did not meet those obligations, whatever that was. The option is to always go back at that point and say, well, this was a violation of the crimes code, let's say, and you're going to get a citation on top of not completing. That's an option. I'm not saying that always happens, but they do hold that over those that are responsible for their work, and they do meet weekly with the people that are in it. It's usually, I think she said, 8 to 9 week process from beginning to end for most people that face the panel, unless it's a rather large incident. But they are the ones, the district attorney's office and the people on the panel, that hold these, hold the kids accountable for whatever is before them.
I think too, if I'm reading you correctly, your question is around, if I have to do community service on a Saturday, who's going to be there with me if I am Barb's student? And I think that's a good question, and I don't have a clean answer to that yet. I think that's got to be part of what we organize if we are going to assign community service. I know that sounds appealing to a lot of us when we're in these conversations, but it does require oversight and guidance when that's happening. So we would have to talk more about that. It's a good question.
Okay, well, if there's any other questions about that, we'll move on. We just have a few touch points here on some safety around the district, in and out of our buildings and the stadium. Our vestibules, we've been working very well with those in place, with the Raptor system in place on checking in our visitors, our contractors, and the like. It's worked out for us very well. This year, we're going to roll out another level to the Raptor emergency management app, where we can do accountability during drills, emergency circumstances. It'll be an option for our staff to report back to administration in their respective buildings, the accountability of students and personnel in the buildings if issues were to occur, as well as to push out notifications in a more thorough format than we currently use. For instance, we might be using the PA at the present time to announce that we're having a fire drill or there's an emergency in the building. We could use this app that would overtake the screens in the classroom and the screens that are in the CAF and the open areas in the building, and it would broadcast that same message so more people are receiving the message in a timely fashion, for example. This is just one very foundational level of doing that, so there'll be a lot more work with this, but just wanted to make you aware that that's one of the platforms we looked at. We actually, Jim and Joe and I just had Karthik set up a meeting with a company called Alertus. They provide the panic buttons that have been in our building for years, but their platform has expanded greatly, so we can tie into their alerting system with the systems we have. They already have a partnership with the I Love You Guys Foundation, which is our response protocols, as well as with Raptor, which is our visitor management. So it sounds like it's going to be a good match for us. We're looking to get a proposal from them on what they would recommend in our building, and then we'll go through that and probably bring it back to this group and then obviously to the board beyond that level. But those organizations that we have met with and talked with have said that each of their individual pieces that we have are compatible with one another, so we were happy to hear that. Our interior door lock system is still, we're still working through that to get that up and running. So Joe, I don't know if you have any more you want to comment with regards to that, or?
I met with the installers this week to get a game plan together. So they have the hardware; it's steadily coming in, and then we're going to get a game plan together to knock it out. It's about 45 minutes to an hour per door, so we might put it on second shift at night. I don't know how loud it's going to be, if they have to drill into the door or do modifications, so we want to keep disruption to a minimum.
So our exterior locking systems, they have all been updated, tied in with our swipe access that was done last year. Our camera surveillance, we continue to work to improve that. The most recent grant application was focused entirely on that and updating the foundational work for that, the supporting work in the background, as well as expanding our coverage with our camera systems. Vape sensors have been in place now since the beginning of the school year. We've had a good response with that, and the district, different administrative teams have been dealing with those issues effectively. I can say between the vape and the change in posture that the district has had on the use of phones in the classroom has plummeted the incidents that my team is seeing. It's incredible, the difference without those phones in the classroom. So pairing those two together has been a really a wonderful match for us. Our internal communication systems I mentioned earlier, public address systems, the phone systems that have speakers on them. Again, we're working on more integration features for those when it comes to announcing the incidents that might be occurring in the building, or just for general announcing. With the systems that we have, again, are integrated to these other platforms that we're talking about. So we'll continue to work through that process. I mentioned the Alertus buttons. That's the direct call to the county's 911 system. So that would require a follow-up. So what that panic button does, and they're in all of our buildings, is simply alert the 911 center that there's an immediate request for assistance at whatever location. So schools have them in the county, all the district courts have them. Some churches have them that are high incident locations or that feel there's a need, but it doesn't tell the responders what the problem is. So it does require a backup 911 call. So that's part of the training protocol that we've gone through with staff this year, at the end of last year as well, just to make them aware, like, if you hit the panic button, that's great. Help is on the way, but it's more important that we also tell them when we can, when it's safe to do so, what that emergency is. So we've been working through that process, and again, been very successful with that as well. You can advance that there.
Well, just one question, Mr. Fabrizi. For the internal locks, just out of curiosity, how many locks, and what would the timeline be like for getting that done?
So we're around 500 interior door locks spread across the 7 buildings. So at, 2 locks an hour, or 4 locks an hour up to, with 2 installers, it could take, a month or so. Yeah.
So with regard to the strategy, is it to knock out one building at a time, or are you going to sweep like on a more broad? I guess it doesn't necessarily matter. It's the same man hours, but I'm just curious if there's going to be like a piecemeal.
We're going to focus on one building at a time.
Okay, that makes sense. Because it's then some will have it, some won't. It'll be like a whole thing. That's a good question, Todd. The question that I have is about the vape sensors. If you could talk a little bit more about just incidents. Maybe we could have numbers. I think that would be helpful just to give some perspective. You don't have to give them right now. And that's my first part of the question. The second part is whether or not there has been any feedback or dialogue about those that are not offenders but kind of got caught in the mix of the sensor going off, how that's impacted, if there's been incidents where kids are getting pulled but they didn't do anything wrong and yet they have to go through this whole rigmarole because of circumstance and time.
So from what, and I'll just speak to the high school, from what Dr. Fuller and his team have told me, is that those incidents are very low numbers. Yeah, because the sensors that we're using are pretty specific and they can track them relatively quickly, so they're almost certain who they're dealing with on any given circumstance. There have been a few where it was kind of confusing who was what. And the kids have been responsive to it, I have to say. So, yeah, it was me and I was in there, and we haven't had any real pushback. So we continue to work with it. As I said, Dr. Fuller and his team have been successful with it. He's not reported any significant incidents or hang-ups with anything that's happening. So I just hope that it continues the way it is, bringing those numbers down.
Yeah, it would be really great to see actually the numbers from this year as opposed to last year,
Yeah.
if that data exists, just to see how it dropped off.
Yeah, we did put out a call, I think you did this week, correct? About,
Yeah.
which ones they tripped, how many were accurate versus some of the other sensors activations on there. So, and there were some bugs in the system. The system has an aggression detector.
Right.
Well, some of the vape detectors were mounted too close to the public address speaker, and every time the bell schedule went off,
It
the
would trip
sensor
the
would
sensor.
go off. So
Yeah, right.
we're adjusting those things as well. So just
Okay.
little nuances that we have to play
Awareness
with.
that they exist is probably a deterrent as well. That's helpful
Yeah.
to begin with.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Just a comment to some of the exterior safety adjustments we've been making at the stadium. So we've been doing very well so far this season with incidents and managing the events that we're having without any real problems. The one entry system with multiple lines and ticket scanners at the main gate is the focus that we're doing. We tried it last Friday night. Seemed to work pretty well. We reviewed some of the cameras just to look and see what patterns we're seeing with folks approaching, things of that nature. We're going to try and do multiple lines of entry. We worked with Ms. Fox and the team that does the ticket scanning for the football events about how to make that better. So that's been a positive. We all met outside and talked about the ticket booths and how to manage them and what that's going to look like. So I think we have a pretty good game plan in place. They will be installed by the game on the 27th. So they should be up and running. We checked and, got all the clearances to get them set up. We added some additional lighting around the main entry point of the stadium. So if you're on Campus Drive, there are 3 light poles that actually line up with the 3 gates. So we were able to put new lighting on all those facing the stadium. So that area, which has traditionally been a little darker, is now much brighter. We did the same thing in the back of the stadium. We put in temporary lighting with the use of some carts and things like that, as well as tied into the field house. So a lot of good feedback about that. We've been very diligent about specific placement of our personnel during the games. There's always at least one person at every entry exit point, regardless of whether it's in use or not, in the case of an emergency where it would have to be open or utilized in some fashion. So that part of it's been very good. Again, it seems to be flowing very well. Of course, our 2 biggest games are yet to come this year, so we'll see how that goes.
I appreciate all the work you did on the stadium, on the improvements there. I think it's like night and day from experiences of past years. There was a high volume of folks at this last game because of the fact that it was middle school involvement and stuff like that. So, there were a lot of folks on, the field had some little melee. But everything else seemed to be working very well, and the tables have been very well received from everybody I've spoken to. It seems like everybody's really enjoying the new concession area and the opportunity that affords people to kind of relocate themselves from that corner. I think it was a huge improvement. So thank you very much for working so hard on that.
You can advance that there, Mr. Weaver. Some of the inside stuff we did at the stadium, in addition to what I already mentioned, was the access card readers in the field house and the press box. We're talking about what that's going to look like. There is a new camera system all around the new snack stand. That is up and running. We've been monitoring that. It seems to have very nice coverage. So we're hopeful that it's not needed in any way, shape, or form, but it's there if we do need it. The patrolling of people inside has been a benefit for us as well, just to keep them moving. And the kids, again, they've been pretty responsive to it, but, it's like every other stadium at this time of year in the country. There's only so much we can do. But they've been very responsible and respectful, and I think some of that speaks to the fact that these guys and gals that they're seeing are people they see in their building every day. So some considerations about some things moving forward is having patrols of the lot. So as we move into these the homecoming game and our Springford game that's coming up, we'll have some of our staff actually in the lots moving people into the stadium and not have them congregating around the campus during those times. We talked before about access gates and what that would look like. We might do something in a temporary fashion with some of these events just to see how that works with regards to flow. And then we've had a conversation as well with the administration of the high school and the middle schools about policies with regards to kids coming in, re-entry after a certain time in the game, those kinds of things. So we continue to work through that. So we will tie in the camera footage in the stadium to that grant that I mentioned. So by all indications, we should be able to receive that, and we'll move forward with that once we hear back from the state. So constant review, constant conversations with the players that are involved in all this, and we welcome your feedback if you see anything or hear anything.
So one of the things that I can add to the conversation is that several months ago we brought forward the Evolve technology system. And we talked about that at the school board meeting, and we have some options that we continue to look at. We're not ready to provide any direction yet on those. They both have pluses and minuses. Money is involved. We do understand that North Penn is having success with the Evolve system. We understand that there are other school districts doing other things as well. So we're still investigating other options and alternatives to that. We will continue to look for grant opportunities as well. We are in contact with our Evolve people. So that's not out of the game yet, but we're just making sure that we look at the total breadth of what it is that we want to accomplish and how to best accomplish it, considering all the variables.
I think you're next.
Well, before we move on, Chief Miller, you have given us a ton of information over the last few months in regards to the school police officers. And you may have mentioned this, or you may have discussed this with us. At the end of the school year, will we get a detailed debrief of how this program has gone?
Yeah, I've been keeping record of the interactions. I've been asking the officers to kind of keep score, if you will, of what they're doing, just so we have an idea of where they're at. And I think we've crossed over the growing pains piece with our principals about where we want them and how we're utilizing them. But the systems that each of the buildings have in place seems to be functioning very well. And I keep touching base with some of my colleagues in the same field about, is this appropriate? Have you tried these particular things and whatnot? And a lot of feedback. So we as a countywide group have a meeting next Friday to discuss some of the trends that we're seeing since just at the start of this school year. So we keep abreast of that as well. But I'll include all that in a summary for each of you to review.
Mr. McKinney, we also have the opportunity at the end of our school year, associated with this Safe to Say and our safety report that we provide as well to hit it then, just to summarize for the entire year. Okay, so moving on. So one of the areas of the vestibules that we continue to look at is here in the high school. And what we are looking at is possibly addressing 6 different areas here at the high school for future consideration for some sort of capital program. 1, to address the main entrance in the vestibule itself. 2, to address concerns about the main office, the counseling office, this library where we are right now, health offices and suites, and adjacent areas. Talking about corridors and classrooms adjacent to the library, how to better use those with egress and ingress associated with what we currently have, and how to make that better. We have reached out as a team, Dr. Russell, Dr. Fuller, Mr. Fabrizio, and myself, and we met with an individual who represents the Heckendorn-Shiles Architects, Matt Heckendorn, who is the principal of the firm. And we met with him, went through some ideas and goals that it might look like, and he provided a basic services agreement. So these next couple of items in here are basically pulled from the services agreement to address those 6 or 7 issues that we had talked about. We continue to look at the elasticity of what it is that we want to get done. So the proposal includes professional design services. Remember, they can design anything as long as we tell them what it is that we want them to design, and that's part of the issue at this point in time. How to best control a lot of these situations together or individually. And then we would also then come into full view of what a proposed project schedule might look like. You can imagine that from an engineer's standpoint and an architectural standpoint, once we tell them what we want and once they can design what it is that we want and we can review that, at that point in time, then they can give us a realistic view of this is 24 months out, or this is 36 months out, or this is something that can get done in 18 months. But once we tell them what the package is, they can turn around within 2 weeks and really begin to give us some sort of a timeline perspective. They can be absolutely flexible in scheduling with what it is that we want, and make sure that with the students in school to also take that into consideration. The total cost for architectural services is proposed right now about $35,243 with an option to help move the program forward in the public, about $6,530. We are not recommending it at this point in time. We're just beginning that conversation. We're just sharing with the committee what it is that we're looking at. There is no recommendation to go ahead and approve it. They're a great group. We met with them. We'll continue to meet with them and develop what it is that we might be looking at, and of course bring it forward to the committee and then to the full school board. We just wanted the committee to know that we continue to work on this particular subject, which has been a sore subject for us for quite a while.
So in this initial conversation, did HSA come and walk the space to give you an idea? That's what he came and met with you guys here?
Yes.
Okay. And did he give you an idea? I mean, this is for their services, and I understand that. But did he give you an idea based on the conversation that you had about what type of vision he would have in mind, or what type of scope the overall project would be?
Yes.
And what was that answer?
So he had.
I know it's not, you didn't say it, but just out of curiosity.
Dr. Russell, if you want to weigh in as well, my take from our conversation was that, hey, I've got plenty of opinions and options where I think we can address some of these things. One of the things that he pointed out dealt directly with the safety vestibule, and he said it, and we all kind of looked at him and said, why didn't we think that?
Yeah.
So his presence right then and there almost was worth it.
Yeah, the value of it, right?
Yes. So he came up with an idea right away, and we said, all the months that we spent thinking about it, we never came up with that. So it was spot on for just that particular item. Of course, when we talked about the counseling center and we talked about the library, his question was, well, how do you want to change it? Because most new buildings don't have libraries like this. And so that's all part of the design development that we need to feed to them so that they can develop what the plan might look like.
In partnership with the team develop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And I guess my overall, and you and I, we have had conversations about what has been produced to date with regards to rendering packages and things. And I think that HSA works in a much different fashion than that. And I think that they're more responsive to listening to what you're trying to achieve and then providing solutions, as opposed to just, they don't let you kind of go out there on the limb and flounder. So I want to know, I guess, if we go down a road of having them provide services, if what they're going to produce back to us will be feasible for us to actually execute. So I don't know necessarily how to find that out, whether or not that was part of the conversation in terms of construction budget. I mean, it's kind of the sky's the limit with these things, right? So I'm curious as to what would be the acceptable position for the district to actually execute whatever they produce back to us for the services of $35,000.
And that's a really good question.
Okay. We did not ask that specific question because we didn't get into the weeds quite that far at this point. I want to add that we've engaged Dr. Fuller. He wants to engage his team, his staff, in more conversations about what might be and why. What's the purpose of even bringing any of this up? And just to zero in on a couple of things, the vestibule is the highest priority item. How do we expand that so that it's a little bit larger before people just come in and they're in the lobby of the high school? We'd like to change that. He had some great ideas, as Jim mentioned. We're also thinking about this very large space, and do we create a large meeting room in the back of the library? Again, because there are examples and models out there where these spaces are being utilized differently because students are accessing information differently. We have to have lots more conversation about that, but we really are engaging with Dr. Fuller and giving him a voice along with his team. He needs to then extend those conversations to staff. So they became a bit preliminary again because of the newness of the team and wanting the high school to have a voice in this. But those are some of the big ideas. Counseling would love to somehow maybe shift away from that back dark hallway they feel like they're in sometimes. We have additional counselors. We do not have enough office space for the counselors and the service providers that we would like to support. In here, we've talked about more collaborative learning spaces for students, like you might see in a college library, where there are opportunities for them to project or work with digital resources and together with other students in a space that would provide them a little bit more privacy or quiet if they need it. Maybe they're glass collaborative spaces. So these are newer ideas and approaches that are being implemented into libraries that are intriguing us. We're really just starting to dive into the conversations and really have to have more of our high school representatives a part of the conversation, and Dr. Fuller and the team being those key members to start. So kind of starting over, but we wanted you to know we're investigating, we're considering what would really serve our students and staff most effectively.
And I think that that's the starting over piece, I think, is really what's necessary in order to kind of reevaluate what can be done with what we have and the real estate that we own and all of those different conversations we've had to date. I think for me, before committing to the 35 grand, 36 grand, let's call it, I think that I would want to understand in a broad sense what the long pole is in terms of, is this a 5-year plan? This is kind of like re-envisioning what the school will do and be for the foreseeable future, right? So it's kind of almost like not as large scale as the addition here that's been done, but it is sort of the same vein in terms of, well, if that's the priority, is that year one? Like, what are we really looking at? And then with regards to HSA's contribution, is that a first pass? Do we get revisions? Do we have dialogue and feedback? Are they going to bill hours after a certain amount of time? What all does that include? Because inevitably, things are kind of a moving target, right? Because then they're going to produce something back to us, and we're going to say, well, we don't like this, 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 and this. Then does money start to accrue? So, those are questions in terms of, like a not to exceed number. We really have to come up with. We don't want to get to a point that then we can't close the loop, right?
Right. I think a lot of those details will come in the form of an AIA contract that Mr. Subers will continue to work on. And my experiences have been that once we're ready and we see what that is, then we enter into that contractual negotiations with the architect. The school board appoints the architect. We have a finalized contract, and then we start seeing the 1,000 pages of designs and drawings and all of that kind of stuff in a
Right.
final form.
Right, and so that's where I'm saying, in terms of timeline, these things, doesn't just happen. It's not just plug and play, right? So there's a development process, and there's a lot of research that has to be, and knowledge that has to be gained through the process of discovery or whatever. But I guess for me, with regards to committing that amount of money, I just want to make sure that it's not for naught, and that we're actually collectively agreeing that we're going to take a step and make an investment towards XYZ in some fashion. And having known how HSA works with other groups and other projects, I think that they're very willing to meet folks where they are. That's been my experience, and so I just want to make sure that it's purposeful and that we're really putting good money. We're not throwing bad money towards something that we're not going to ever accomplish.
Or good money towards a bad.
Correct.
Agreed.
Right. Well, however the saying
Right,
goes.
I
Right.
gotcha. So I just want to say that administration did not bring something formal forward to the committee. Wanted to inform you because I agree. We want a purpose for any revisions or renovations that we would propose to the committee and then ultimately to the board. And we need to know the details that you just called out about any kind of agreement with an architect. So we will have that information, and we'll continue the conversations over the course of these committee meetings. But now you're in the loop, and great prompts for us to think about moving forward. Thank you. We need to talk about a football storage shed. They've been waiting so patiently.
So,
You have a garage at home, right? No? You're good. Okay. Well, solve that problem. Next.
so I met with Coach Heist and Mr. Felty some time ago about the proposal of some more storage space, and we walked the field and kind of brainstormed some ideas, and I think we found a pretty ideal spot behind the home side bleachers. I don't know if you can see it up there. There's like a red rectangle up there with the arrow pointing to it. So the structure would be about 20 by 26 and kind of have a loft area. It would sit on a concrete pad. And Boosters is willing to contribute around $55,000 for the structure. This price does not include the footers, the pad permitting, electrical, and we definitely want to have a camera focused on that because there's some high dollar items in there. And then the existing fence around the stadium, the structure will kind of straddle that line, and the fence will return back into it. So that's what we were proposing. Coach Heiss, if you have anything.
Yeah, just to clarify, we have a ton of equipment, much more than would fit in my garage at home, unfortunately. But, you know, just to be clear, we have things in the home team room. We have things in a designated closet next to our fitness center. We have things in the phys ed closet. We have things in the closet behind the main gym. And what I'd like to do is consolidate everything for football, 7th through 12th grade, into one space. Because it would just make collecting all of the equipment at the end of the season. All of our helmets and shoulder pads have to go out to be reconditioned annually to Rydell, which is the provider that we use. And when we collect 300 pairs of shoulder pads and 300 helmets, what inevitably winds up happening is they have to get moved 4 or 5 times from where we originally collect them, because we put them in the water polo locker rooms, and then water polo needs the locker rooms, and then we put them in the away team room, and then we need the away team room to set up for graduation. And we wind up moving everything around multiple times. So long story short, I'd like to have a home for all of it that is secure. You know, we're talking about $300, $400 helmets. So we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It would have to be surveyed with security cameras. It would need electric run to it. We have a huge rodent problem with our current shed, and many of the sheds on campus have fallen into disrepair. Most of our bags that we use for daily drills are being eaten by mice and other critters, or urinated on. You know, they're really kind of nasty, to be honest. Just to clarify, it would not be the boosters that would be supporting the funding. We have been earmarking monies through my student activity fund that I manage. So we have our booster club, which is a 501c4 or 501c3, excuse me. But this is through my account, through the district, the student account, that we have been earmarking monies with Mr. Felty's approval, because obviously those monies are supposed to be spent on the kids, invested back in the kids that helped in the fundraising of those on an annual basis. So we've been earmarking those monies for this particular project for the last 3 years to try to get it moving forward. And I guess what I'm asking for, if it's possible, is a little bit of help from the district, being that I see it as being mutually beneficial. We're opening up space inside this building that is much needed for other things. You know, so I thought that there could be kind of a mutual work together here, where maybe the district was responsible for the permitting and the slab, and my team would be responsible for the structure. I've already worked with Lap Structures up in Limerick, is who I got the original estimate from, and they could build this building 20 by 26 with plenty of storage for everything that we would need for roughly $50,000. So, you know, that's kind of why I'm here tonight.
Thank you for doing all the legwork with that.
Sure.
So the 55 is like department money, we'll call it, correct? What is the boosters buy-in?
There's none on their part.
Have you approached them at all?
I haven't, because they already have a large burden with how they fundraise, running our banquet, and the other things that they do for our team. It's a struggle, as you know, to get blood from a stone. So I haven't burdened them with that. We've been doing this through our student account. I'm sitting on, you know, roughly $65,000 in that account right now, with 50 some of it earmarked for this. So
I guess then what would be the district's cost?
I approached John Moran about this before we met. Actually, we were meeting. I called him on the phone and asked him, and he was okay with the location. We do need, you know, sealed engineered plans. Once those plans are detailed, that's going to dictate whether we need a slab or a footer. So based on that, then I can get cost for that, you know, the slab/footer,
Right.
and go from there.
Can you work up a budget with regard to the other items, though? Slab/footers, whatever that happens to be, but with regards to the electrical and the security components, that seems like you should probably be able to come up with a number there as to what the
Correct.
layout is.
Based on the electrical needs, I think you just need some lighting in there. That's it.
There's already electric, my understanding, run right to that area, that could just
You
be.
just have to tap in, yeah.
Correct.
But then for the camera, I mean, that's maybe one. I mean, that to me doesn't seem like the largest.
Electrical and camera, you're probably around, I don't know, 5,000 or so.
Okay.
In that
So really,
range.
the main, I mean, a concrete slab's actually kind of money.
It might,
Yeah.
it might be around 20,000.
And so I have a mason on my staff who estimated that the number would be probably around $15,000 for a slab of that size with tubes sunk, but we were unsure of whether or not we needed
Yeah.
footers
Whatever
sunk.
the requirement happens to be, right?
Because there's
understood.
it's not a garage of sorts. There's not going to be any vehicles parked in it.
Sure.
You know, and just one of the other things I wanted to pitch was, you know, that area under our home bleachers is very, very viewable from Campus Drive. I thought that aesthetically this would look nice and it would give our grounds crew an opportunity to kind of hide some of the things that they put under our bleacher behind the building, just as an additional pro.
Are there any other questions from the committee? How do you feel about it, Dr. Weston?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I didn't realize all of the things that were going on now with the equipment. I mean, if you're moving things all over the place, you know, with the different seasons, you're moving from the water polo locker room to the away locker room. That's man hours right there. So if you have a single place that you can store everything all year long, I mean, that's a savings in resource. So, you know, just for that, I think it sounds like a great idea. And if it improves the physical security, if we can try to get a little rodent proofing in there to maintain,
That's on my list
so
of
that
things, the rodents, yeah.
you know, you're not having your things urinated on. I mean, I think that's I can't think of any reason not to go for something like this.
What do you think?
In some ways, I'm actually amazed that we don't have something closer to this. It makes just a lot of sense from a property management viewpoint. Having the football team's equipment scattered throughout the building really makes no sense, and we should be protecting it from damage to begin with. This is actually a very light ask as far as other things are concerned for how much gain it would have and how much further down the road this will be used. This isn't a short-term project. This will be here for years. Actually, I'm in favor of having Joe go out, get some drawings, get some bids. We should, I would like to see this stuff. Obviously, we couldn't do it during this season, but we could have it put away in the springtime,
Right.
so that in the fall you get to open a door and there's your stuff.
My only question is about climate control and storage of things that maybe might get a little moisture logged.
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that. I could speak to the woman I've been working with at Lab Structures. Name is Tanya. She's been very communicative. You know, I like the idea of the slab because I think that will certainly help with the rodent part of it, as opposed to just, you know, a standing garage on sort of a crushed modified pad, if you will. I could ask our Rydell rep about the temperature variations and whether or not our helmets would be susceptible to any kind of damage if the building would need insulation.
Yeah. Or maybe like almost like a not an attic fan, but like almost like a fan of. I can imagine it would be like over 100 degrees in there in the summertime.
Yeah, so we can put like a passive roof vent on there. I'm sure there'll be gable vents or a ridge vent.
Okay.
There are gable vents. There's actually a dormer. The way that we originally designed the building, I have a rough design that I've shared with Mr. Fabrizio.
Yeah.
It has a rather large dormer. There are windows only on the second floor
Okay.
from a security standpoint so that they couldn't be kicked in or broken, anything stolen. So those windows could be opened and still have the building be securely locked at the bottom. It would be accessible to our practice field with one solid door and one large roll-up door to get all of our big crash pads and stuff out of there. And then it would also be accessible within the fence line with one solid door to whoever would need to have access to it.
Okay. My question was about climate control. Really, that was it. So I guess that would be the only thing I would add in terms of like when you find out about the other things, make sure we are covering that at a solution. Are you good, Todd?
I am good. I just appreciate Coach you
Okay.
coming in. Yeah, I am good with it. I just appreciate Coach coming tonight and bringing this to our attention, and because anything that we can do to give our students or our community a more positive experience, especially the time and effort that you and your staff put in. We appreciate that. So thank you for thinking ahead and bringing this to our attention.
And also for the responsibility of holding the money and earmarking it, as you mentioned. I think that is a huge asset to the district that you had you waited until you had a full plan in place. So we appreciate that very much. Okay.
Mr. Weaver, why
Good
didn't
stuff.
you think of this? I'm just curious.
So it's interesting. I think that the concept is needed and necessary, but I'm going through procurement rules in my head right now, just to make sure that we touch base with Mr. Subers, just to make sure on a lot of these things. The fact that there's student activity monies, I don't know where that threshold is because it still resides within the school district and the school district's coffers. It's earmarked through the student activity funds. So I'm not quite sure of those procurement rules and regulations associated with that, but I'll double check just to make sure.
But you'll make the money work.
Yes. Oh, the money. Yeah, the money will work.
Great. All right.
So I just want to follow up something that Coach Heiss mentioned as part of what he was sharing, and that is most of our sheds are in very poor condition. And I've talked to Mr. Fabrizio about this, and I wonder how the committee feels about us developing a plan and a timeline to really replace all of the sheds that are dilapidated and they don't match. I would love to get them all so that they match and they look good and they make a good presentation and they are not infested with rodents, because there's things that are stored there and then our kids use these, our students use these. So to that point, it takes us to maybe possibilities for considering what we can do with the other sheds. They're much smaller. They would not be as nearly as expensive, but they are supportive
Put 'em
of
on
the
the-
activities.
Put them on the radar.
Yeah, put them
Yeah.
on the radar. Yeah.
Coach, would you be open to a metal building?
I'm really open to anything that fits our needs storage-wise. I think that that's the rough square footage that I believe we need. The construction of it is really irrelevant to me as long as it's going to last. My issue with, your common board and batten shed is, we could invest all this money and it inevitably is going to look like the one that we have now. So the building that we've been working on has a I'm not going to know the term without looking at it, but it has a siding that is supposed to be rodent resistant. It's not just your normal vinyl siding or
Like a cement-based product?
correct. It's not exactly Hardybacker. It's not that expensive, but it's some variant of that. And then I priced it out with a standing seam metal roof,
Saw that,
which
yeah.
will last forever. So
Thank you. Hey, I just need some money and it could go away.
Sorry, football is getting all of the money that you had allocated for operations and facility.
So So why an operations building? So administration views there being a need and benefit to relocate my team and safety to another common site. Currently we're stuck in the back of district office. It's quite jammed in there. All of you have been through it. You know the struggles we go through in that building, and we're lacking significant space. There's also great concern with the vehicles parked in the stadium and at district office. I've approached John Moran about expanding the parking at district office and was promptly turned down because we're over our impervious surface. So we have to stick with what we have there. We cannot expand it. So why a safety facility? The chief of police, Mr. Miller here, is located at East, while all of our storage lockers are located throughout the buildings and not one central location. And the school police officer vehicles are often parked in the stadium. The officers come in now, they're at the high school, we're taking up parking in the back, they leave their personal vehicles there, and then they take the police cars to their respective buildings. So this creates a lot of clutter, not only at the high school parking, but in the stadium. So we're just trying to free up space and make it more efficient. So we're looking at trying to see where a building would work the best. We're looking at West, Skip Back, and possibly Schwanksville for a building. We're exploring all options at this point in time. So we would like to move all of our operations vehicles, safety and security vehicles, as well as grounds into one space. So right now, we're looking at an estimated 6,000 square feet. That's kind of like bare minimum, and that would be around 1 to 2 million. This is an aerial view, kind of Middle School West. You see the big red square there. It comes off an access road from Swamp Creek. So we were thinking about that area as a possibility. All of our utilities are located on the end of that building. We have what's called a forced sewer main in the back there, so tying into the sewer would not be a problem. Our electrical and water are also back there, and it's kind of out of out of the main public view. Skip Back, it's just kind of playing around. We would have to take part of a soccer field to put a building in. We could also move it up towards the top. We would have, yeah. Well, I think that's a retention basin up there. If we moved it pretty much straight up, there's a field in there we could possibly use. Next one, Dean or Jim. And then up at Schwanksville, there's kind of a slight incline up to that white box I have on there, and then it's pretty much flat up there. So this is behind the school. This is the teacher parking on 4th Street. So we would just cut a road in and then come up to there. I drew that red line I drew that line there to kind of preserve the area where kids could still play. It looks like there was some kind of baseball field there, or some kind of play area where kids could still congregate. Obviously, we would need to cut in another access path off of the current playground, kind of where the basketball poles are in there. A pathway up to there, so they wouldn't have to traverse through the operations parking lot. So that's another option. Ms. White.
Yeah. So you explained the access for the west, and that's obviously it's on the edge of the district, so it's kind of
That's not ideal.
Not
but
ideal, right?
It's an option.
Skip Back. Where would the access point be? I mean, that's sort of maintenance in that back corner anyways.
That would be off the main drive when you come through the front of the school.
Yeah, as you
kinda
wrap around the
as
side.
you wrap around.
Right. So that to me, there's like more of an easy, clear path of access.
Yes.
Where would that be? Schwanksville's layout's a little funky with their parking lots. So how, and especially like when you pull in off the main drag, you kind of have to, it's narrow. Like I feel like it's not as like versatile in terms of.
Well, the only way to access this would be off of, it looks like 4th Street off the side. You couldn't get to this from coming up the bus loop through the front because there is no pathway now to that location.
But you'd have to do some significant paving from the lot over to the, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there would be a lot of traffic back and forth, and I mean, the thing about facilities is that they're kind of all over all day long, right? And so the teachers'
water tower.
cars, like that's a pretty stagnant spot during the day,
Yes.
just for functionality purposes. I mean, West is really, that one, you don't have to, there's no disruption to the flow of the building because it's separate. And I think Skip Back could potentially be a similar, it would allow similar availability to the location. I don't see the Schwenksville location as,
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion. I
Yeah.
don't know if anybody else has I might be the only one with an opinion about that. But I don't know, in terms of whatever the building is, obviously the structure itself has a cost, but they're not all in the same township. So how does that work with,
So I did reach out to Skipback Township and Lower Frederick Township to see what the requirements would be. Obviously, we might or may not have to go through land development. They're still getting back to me on that. We might be able to get a waiver on that, but it's going to be based on the size of what we're doing. So they really didn't see any issue with it.
is there any, like in terms of assessing like feasibility between, say, Skip Back and West, can we do both and then compare and say like, okay, well, if we put it at Skip Back, it's going to be X. If we put it at West, it's going to be X, and then kind of weigh pros and cons based on that?
Sure, I'm sure there would be a fee associated with that because,
For permits and,
well, to, I guess, come up with pricing for that because we're going to have to do studies of both. We're going to have to know pervious versus impervious coverage. So we're going to have to
Sure.
get a surveyor for both properties.
but they would love to give us a deal
Yeah,
if they're doing two.
yeah, 2 for 1. So I can definitely inquire about the cost and
right.
work something up for both Skip Back and West.
I mean, I don't know if it's cost prohibitive to look at both. Are you leaning towards one? You gave 3 options. Are you leaning towards one over the other?
I would like to be more central.
Yeah, Skip Back is
so
really
there's
central.
pros and cons to each
Yeah.
building. I guess the pro to Skip Back, it's closer to everyone, but
Yeah.
the one con is having to go across the bridge.
Yeah.
So if something's happening and the bridge is backed up, we're gonna have to sit through that traffic.
You have
or
trouble
go
getting
up
down to West, though.
73. Same thing with West, or you could hop and
Or
come
come
down
around
the
the top.
loop around.
Right, sure.
I would personally lean towards Skip Back. We're not taking a baseball field.
Is that a joke?
Yes.
Way, and it's not as overt right out there,
Yeah.
so to speak.
But for functionality of district
Mm-hmm.
function,
Mm-hmm.
are we sacrificing our efficiency as a district because West, with regards to the type of vehicles that are going to be at West, right? Because it's not teacher
Right.
vehicles, it's not,
Right.
that would be my concern. I think West is really the place that makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, especially that access road. It's completely separate. I like it from that standpoint. You bring up a good point about the bridge. The thing with Skip Back, though, doesn't the township building have sort of like a facilities? It's not on this view.
Yeah, their main building is kind of off into the,
Off to the
top
side
and the
here.
top. Yeah,
But
right.
it backs up. Like, it's not like
Yeah, it's behind those bushes there
Yeah,
at the
this
top of
way.
the slide, yeah.
the building still sort of would be a little tucked away.
I mean, we could plant trees. There's ways to hide things.
And,
But-
yeah, they,
You could do berms. I mean, with stormwater management, I mean, we might have to expand the retention basin based on how many, square feet of blacktop you're going to put in.
Yeah.
So you could possibly berm up and then plant some trees on the
Not
top.
as big an area though. That front area on Heckler is not as big as it looks on the image though.
Yeah.
I think because it's sloped, it's not like level, right?
Yeah.
right,
So
it is sloped,
yeah.
yes. And the drainage basin
yeah,
is,
yeah,
is to the other side there.
right.
Mhm.
I guess I would be curious about what the comparison would be and what the I don't know if path of least resistance is worth something sometimes. Maybe Lower Frederick may be a better, well, maybe you could find out rather than speculate, right?
Sure. And I'm still looking for buildings that are available. So
Well, that's the challenge. I mean,
Yeah,
and I
it
acknowledge
is.
that part. It's, you know,
It is a challenge.
at least with this option, you're going to get what you need as opposed to having to retrofit something that you're purchasing. So I appreciate it from that standpoint. And I would also appreciate not having random vehicles scattered. That was it was almost like that slide was like, how do we make this slide for Laura? The why.
The Y one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Did she coach you on that? No, it was all his idea. Okay. Okay. So I mean, I'm good. I'm good with finding out more about this. I don't know that it's.
can you give me a not to exceed number?
Can we find out what the costs are per township before we figure out a not to exceed number?
Okay,
Okay.
that's good.
And you'll put the ticket booths up.
I'm working on that. We're pouring pads for them.
They have to be. I thought they were going to be mobile.
It can be, but where they're at, it's,
The ground really slopes there
Yeah,
at the
it does.
entrance.
That's
so
quite
we wanted
an elevation.
to stabilize them and have them be part of the safety and security
Yeah, right.
system, if you will, where they'd be angled so that individuals working in them can see both people
Forward.
coming
Yeah,
and people going into the
That
stadium.
makes good sense. All right. Fine. Deal.
Okay, so Joe will continue to pester us every day about this, so just to let you know.
Where will the salt go, though?
a what?
The salt bin. Will you keep that at district office, or would you take that with you?
Absolutely, as a reminder.
All right.
Wait,
Okay. I just want to make sure that you're looking at all of the pieces. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, moving on. Bus patrol. So we actually started this bus patrol conversation prior to the pandemic in 2019. We were one of the first school districts to jump on this, and the pandemic happened and we never picked up again. So now we finally are. Bus patrol is a program where we enter into a program, an agreement with the company called Bus Patrol, and what they do is they provide cameras for the outside of our school buses. And then the purpose of them is there is a camera attached to the stop sign on a bus. When the bus has the stop sign deployed, it videotapes cars. And if cars go around them and there is a violation, the way the program works is that a ticket gets issued to the individual with the number, the serial number, all that kind of stuff with the car. It goes to the person owning the car, and then that person is responsible to pay the bill. That fine is split between bus patrol and the school district and the local municipality typically. However, we do have our own ORI number, which Mr. Miller, I'm not quite sure I know what that means, originating something. But essentially we can issue the ticket under our own school police. And so we don't have to share that extra $25 with the municipality. It comes directly to us. There is no cost for us to enter into this program. None whatsoever. The only conversation that we need to have is, do we want additional cameras inside the bus? At this point in time, we're not recommending cameras inside the bus. We already have them inside the bus. So we would like to leave those there, but add 4 different cameras to the outside of our buses to enter into the program. There is a whole bunch of information in here explaining this. I'm not going to go over this because, again, 5 years ago, we were all into this. It has all the information. A lot of school districts have gone this route. And so it has proven itself time and again for us to do this more as a safety feature and a safety upgrade rather than a revenue stream. For those school districts like Methacton and North Penn that have entered into this program, it's not about the revenue stream. It's about awareness and getting this information out to our public to say, hey, pay attention to the stop sign or you will get a ticket. It has been very successful in that way. Again, it's all encrypted information that goes out. It goes right to the home office at Bus Patrol. The only notification we get is, hey, we issued this ticket to this particular person. It goes out, it gets collected, and then we get a listing of cars. Hopefully there's not many of them with the violation and with that money coming back. This particular contract has been reviewed by Fox Rothschild. We're in pretty good shape with that. They said thumbs up. And so we're recommending to move forward with it. Part of their program is that they actually will come out and do a TV program or advertisement. We saw North Penn's, and it's a great thing to put up on our website. And again, it's just notification to our community. Hey, look out. This is about the safety of our children for these school buses.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
Just want to follow up on that, since it's not about collecting the fines and about creating the safety. The school buses that have that system, is there a big decal on it that says this bus is equipped with, or something like that? Because it's great that it's on the school's website, but the majority of the drivers that go through here are either not in our school or not even in our district. So just curious about if there's any thoughts about that.
Yeah, they don't. The school buses do not advertise that.
It's on your driver's safety test not to go through a school bus.
Oh, I understand. I get that, but if we're saying that it's more about the safety and making the public aware of it, a place to make them aware of it is on the bus, so that people would not be. It's an additional thing. You're right. They're running a stop sign that has blinky lights all over
Yeah.
it. So I don't know if reading is exactly what they're going to need to do to prevent them from doing that. But just a thought.
Right. And so we're going to move forward with that. That's our recommendation, committee members. Are we okay with that?
Also,
Mr. McKinney.
yes, so you say it would be on the district website. Would there be any type of way that we could push out a link to all the families in the district, just so they're aware and they can even spread the word?
So
Absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
we do have plans to put it actually in my newsletter next week. We were thinking about it. If it goes to the board, we want to give them a heads up. North Penn did a really nice job putting it on Facebook with a little video. We might do something like that so that we inform our community. You will be held accountable. We do, unfortunately, have incidents where people they drive right through the yellow lights when they're flashing and kids are boarding or deboarding. So they need to know what's on the test, and we're happy to inform them.
Since we don't own our buses, though, is there any STA buy-in, or how does that?
STA has been reminding us on a monthly basis that they want us to go that
Okay,
way.
great,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah, they're all.
Well, it takes care of their drivers and all that stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that. So again, there's a lot more information in there about what bus patrol is. Okay, one other topic, real quick. So Lower Perk Little League, we had an agreement that we entered into in January 2022 to upgrade the fields 6 and 7 and 8 located over at Skipack Elementary property. Where we were just talking, those fields are not located. The original agreement that we entered into said that's fine, you can make those adjustments, but all of the construction needed to be done by June 30, 2024. Obviously, it's beyond June 30, 2024. They have been working behind the scenes to procure a grant. They've been working with legislators. I think they finally have everything in order, and they would like to know if the school district would be interested in an extension through June 30, 2026. The work should be done. Our recommendation is to move forward with that. We'll get a formal extension on the school board agenda so that we can approve it. And there's no blood, no foul, none of that stuff. They just needed some additional time that they didn't expect.
I don't have an issue. Good.
Okay, thank you, committee members.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Well,
So,
wait a second though. Is that field location good for your building though?
Oh, yeah.
If it's not done?
Yeah, it's already there. These are dugouts
No,
at
I
this
mean
point in time.
his
Yeah.
new facilities building. Yeah. Oh, it's too late. Oh, okay.
Fuel's already there.
Oh, okay.
Dugouts are.
All right.
next.
All right. Okay. But you can have until 26. Was that all you have, Jim?
One more thing.
Okay.
So one of the areas that we talked about was how we use our facilities, and been talking with Dr. Russell in various ways that we need to keep our school board, our community, and our school board in the know as we move forward with enrollment discussions and progressions. So the district's elementary schools are operating at a very high capacity with the educational programs that they were designed to use. We are looking at and considering what the future may hold for us. And so we've reached out to Montgomery County Planning Commission to see if they could move forward with giving us some sort of a cost estimate associated with an enrollment study. The last enrollment study that we did was in 2017. And we feel the need that we need to update that because that will help us to drive what kind of future programs that we have with our facilities and where we're going into the future, especially considering items like behavior specialists and counselors weren't necessarily part of these buildings when they were built back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And now it is a significant portion of what our educational program has to offer for our students. So that's kind of where that is. And we are hoping that when we get this enrollment study and look at facilities usage study, which is how many different classrooms that we use and where we use them, that can all be paired up. And then we can look at different options associated with best practices and staff and parents and how to better utilize what it is that we have to make our educational experiences for our students the best that they can get. And so our proposal is to look at a study capacity of usage of the area of all of our buildings, and then see what comes out of that, and then make sure that it meets our district's missions and goals and vision into the future.
Who will do the study?
So right now, we need to look at the professional organizations that do that. We wanted to kind of bring that to the committee just to let you know that we're doing that. And in the future couple of committee meetings, we'll have reviewed the different groups and bring forward a recommendation.
Is this something that you could parlay into the conversations that you've started to have with HSA?
We could. It's not part of what they said that they would do, not that they couldn't add it.
Well, I think it's one nugget, though. It's a
Yeah.
district vision.
Yeah, it may connect. The other really valuable resource we have access to is the Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Okay, good.
And in our
Right.
experience, they've been really helpful in looking at enrollments, conducting an enrollment study, projecting out, and then capacity of your buildings and what your buildings can and could be used for. So I also wanted to just call out, as Jim did very nicely, this is not just about enrollments.
Yeah, right.
Because our enrollments are declining.
It's usage, right?
It is about the
Yeah.
manner in which we use our buildings today. And right now, elementary buildings are tapped out
Yeah.
based on how they're using them. So there's a lot to consider that takes us beyond enrollment.
It seems to me, though, it's a marriage of the two things. I mean, you need the data of this, for
Yes.
sure, but at the same time, in order to re-envision the way that buildings are currently
That's true.
used, you need someone in a similar fashion to what is going to be proposed for this particular area at the high school. You know, you may
It's
need
true.
that in individual buildings. That's what I meant by having them
Gotcha.
engaged with that piece of it, because this information is just the data piece of it.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Not
Good
the
point.
actual how do we
Right.
make, okay, how do we make it now?
Come into the future.
Correct.
Real time. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's twofold in my mind.
Absolutely. And to ensure that the company that we hire brings both of those variables to the table to match
I
that.
don't know that one company needs to, though. I guess that's what I'm getting at, is maybe it doesn't have to be, you know, if we're building a partnership in one area, I don't know that it has to be all under one roof,
So-
in my mind.
So when we go forward, any kind of building program, you need that information when you go to the state and you say, this is why we need to build the building. So it's following a similar formula. You're right, they're not experts in that particular area, but they certainly have people that they've hired on staff, if we hire the right one.
So I think what I would like to ask the committee, very point blank, is whether or not they support a facility usage study. I think the last planning commission study was 18, Mr. Weaver.
2017, but it was
2017.
delivered in 2018.
Okay, I would like to request that we can move forward and really begin to engage in this study. And Mr. Fabrizio doesn't know it yet, but he and I are going to partner on this and gather the data and then think about, with our administrative colleagues, the answers to some of these questions.
I'm in support of that. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
I've been following forward.
I believe that's all we have for tonight.
Wait,
Okay,
new business.
all right.
I have a couple miscellaneous things that I know you want to talk to me about,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
go ahead.
So some of them you touched on already. But I wanted to ask about an auditorium update, if you have any information there. This is like a deli order. Do you want me to tell you everything at once and then you'll respond, or do you want to respond individually?
I might get your order wrong, so.
Okay.
We'll go-
Okay, we'll go one at a time then. Okay, go ahead. Auditorium.
East.
The project of the auditorium. Both.
So east and west, Mr. Ganesh has really been leading the charge with that. Phase 1, we know, is set and ready to go. We'd have to reach back out to Mr. Ganesh on the timeline for that one, just so I don't want to say anything that's not correct.
Wonderful. So we'll get an update on that then. The next one was sort of mentioned, and that's about mice. I was in 3 different buildings, and I had 3 different conversations about mice. So if you see them during the day, I would say it's kind of like not cool. That's maybe a big problem.
Our
So-
provider's coming out tomorrow. They've been contacted.
So can you talk a little bit about, it seems like there's some like perception of the fact that we cannot exterminate because of, is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. So what is available to us as a school district to kind of like mitigate some of this issue?
Sure.
Because they are in students, like heavily used student spaces.
Yeah, so the number one thing is food, the presence of food. Make sure the area, you're not leaving crumbs behind. Number 2, we have to make sure all outside, if there's any gaps in the buildings that they can enter. I mean, a mouse can fit through a 1/4-inch hole. I mean, they can get in small spaces. The other thing is a pest management plan, I believe, which is still on our website. We do have Moyer that comes out. We do have bait boxes throughout the buildings. They are out. They do have a service contract, so they are out on a regular basis. If we do see an uptick in sightings, we do call them out like on an ad hoc thing, so they can investigate, set more traps and things like that.
Sure. So, I mean, and I don't really know a lot about mice mitigation, but like I went down like a little bit of a rabbit hole as to like, okay, we can't want to keep mice healthy. No, I don't want to kill anybody. But like, isn't there some sort of like a bucket scenario contraption? Like they climb up and then they fall in, they can't get out. And
Yeah, I've
then-
seen it on YouTube.
Okay, so you went down the same rabbit hole I did. So I just am wondering, like, is that something that's like tangible? I mean, unfortunately, there are areas in the buildings like that food exists in bins. They get right through the bins. We deliver 2 bins per building of Power Packs food, for example. I'm having, counseling's telling me that mice are getting into those bins. Like, it's just inevitable that it's unavoidable. Apparently one was caught like on a chair in a classroom the other day. Like, yeah. So I'm just wondering like what we can do proactively that maybe is not a service contract or an individual mouse trap that can get maybe en masse a family of mice and we can relocate them to a new world.
Sure. So most of our schools are in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
So it is a problem we have to deal with. It is getting colder, so we're going to probably see an uptick. So I will reach out to Moyer Pest Control and see if there are alternatives or
Collection
additions that
vessels.
we can add to strengthen our collection rate.
I mean, although I am sure that our teachers are happy to catch them individually, but okay. All right, so that's that. And then there was another thing, the evolved sensors we talked about. Garbage. At the stadium, now that we have the new concession area set up, is it possible for us to create some sort of a formalized refuse area, maybe against the fence or something like that? It just seems as though there was like that corner of the concession stand was really, it was pretty intense, the amount of garbage at the end of the last game. I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but as I was walking
So
out,
were the trash cans overflowing?
it was a stadium size amount of garbage, like in like a throughway, in my opinion. So I'm just wondering if there's maybe not enough receptacles or.
I mean, we can certainly add more receptacles. Were they taking the bags out of the cans and just putting the bags in one area, or was it just trash around
I
the
didn't.
can?
I mean, I didn't do we were all there together. I just happened to notice that maybe there was a need that
Sure, we
now
can
that there's
certainly add more
I
cans.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
and then
think-
they stay at the end of the night and clean up.
Of course it was cleaned up by the next day. I just mean in terms of like letting
Absolutely.
people be responsible along the way.
Got it.
And then I think that was all. Yeah, recycling is really a big piece of it, but I understand that we're single stream. Is that true? I heard that, so
Yeah.
that's always, I normally take my plastic with me. But I was thinking maybe along the fence, maybe there just wasn't enough of a opportunity. Now that there's tables there, it gives people a reason to, okay. And I think that was everything. Does anybody else have any other, I'm the only one that really gets into this, I realize.
I'd just like to thank you for keeping us a little longer, so
I can talk about mice longer. No?
Mickey Mouse is in the building.
Which I'm fine with. I just think that, there's going to be a new football shed for him to move into. Thank you guys very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a notice of video recording. and we'll be around with the notes in next month's meetings. All right, thank you.